So why don't we just start out with how you met Brandon?
I met Brandon through our church, Ginghamsburg United Methodist Church. He was teaching Sunday school. He taught all 3 sessions every single week for 7 years. And so when we moved to the area, the Dayton area, he was the Sunday school teacher. And when I was looking for an artist to illustrate my first book, she was his co-teacher. And so we started talking in Sunday school classes before and after picking up the boys. And so Trish McKinney and I started talking, and then she was like, I know who needs to design the book, who needs to design it and work with me, because he does all of my design work. And so we started talking from there. And then we just loved working together after the first book. And at that point, I asked him to come on full-time as the chief creative officer, and then eventually the vice president.
How did you learn of his death?
One of my coworkers had been listening to the news, and she called me right after dinner and said, do you know what is going on with Brandon? And I said, no, I saw him just 2 hours ago. What do you mean? And she said, I think he's dead. She said, I heard an Amber Alert for Zane, and they said that a 22-year-old male had been shot and killed. And he was staying with his mom and Zane, and so there was no one else that it would have been.
Did you know there were problems within the family?
Obviously, I knew that Kim and Jeff were splitting. I knew that there were concerns because they were keeping it quiet until they were ready, until they had a place to live, and could tell him and move out all at once. The exact details I do not know. I know that I was doing what I could to be a friend and a support to Brandon as he helped his mom and Zane through that process.
So he didn't live there, he was just moving in with them to help? Or?
Right. He had a duplex with his uncle in Kettering, but he was living in Troy at the apartment with them during this last month to be with them.
Do you think he thought he might be protecting them? Was that the kind of the feeling
so.
you got?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, just to have somebody else around, and obviously any time that you're estranged from your spouse, it's going to be difficult. And Brandon is a very compassionate person and always willing to be a support system for his family and his friends. So we had another friend who had moved to town recently after a split, and he stayed with her and her kids for a while just to be a support for them too. So it was not anything unusual for him.
Did he ever talk about his stepfather?
Not much. It's kind of funny. He talks about all of his family all the time because he has at least one other family that he's grown up with, that they're all his brothers and sisters, they're all his moms and his dads. So even in the 2 years that I worked and lived with him, I could never quite figure out who was who in what branch, and it was this mom and this mom and this dad and all my brothers and sisters, and so he didn't talk about the bad things. It wasn't in his nature very much to do that. Just to say that he was upset or concerned, and to pray for him and his mom. So,
how would you describe his relationship with this little brother?
He was a very loving big brother, and he helped watch him a lot. He was great with kids, so he would bring Zane over to play with my sons. We'd work at home some days, and they'd all just play with Legos and share Happy Meals and all that kind of stuff. So he was a great big brother.
Well, what do you want him to be most remembered for?
For his service and his heart, his amazing talent, and for the love that he had for all of his friends, whether they were in person, online. You know, he would move heaven and earth to help and be there for you when it was important. You know, one time he knew that one of his friends was going to be in Toledo, and so he'd just be like, I'm driving up to Toledo to see so-and-so because they need a hug, or he had a situation with his family member out in Oklahoma, and he called me one morning and he said, I'm halfway to Oklahoma. I'm not coming in today. I was like, what? He's like, well, there was a problem, so I just got my car and drove to Oklahoma. I'll let you know when I'm back. So, I mean, he just needs to be remembered for those things, and for his witty sense of humor. I think the people that know of him and our friends online, they're going to remember his witty sense of humor and his amazing personality that came through online. But for those of us who had the privilege of knowing him personally, we know that it was his heart that was connected to his sense of humor and his personality to just be sunshine in your day.
Where do you go from here?
I have not figured that out. He was obviously the most important other person that worked in our company. We have some books that we were getting ready to put out in the next 4 weeks. And so I think for now those are going to be delayed a little bit, but we're going to keep pressing on. He would not want anything different. And we'll figure out how to keep going. Because he put too much energy and passion into this company along with me. And so we don't want to let him down, because this was his dream, not just mine.